Tonight, the justices of the Justice for All program have ordered investigations into why 8 inmates at the Akuse prison could not be accounted for when the team went there to the Akuse prison. Also, worldwide condemnation against the ongoing xenophobic attacks in South Africa against foreigners, especially black Africans, is rising. There are reports that new All Progressive Congress, APC government of Nigeria, and civil society groups have issued a memo to the South African embassy in Lagos warning that Nigerians will shut down South African businesses if swift action is not taken to stop these attacks. Here in Ghana, pressure group Occupy Ghana is also calling for a general boycott of South African products and services in Ghana, codenamed Black Friday, as a sign of protest against the inhumane attacks. But are these enough to protect other African citizens in South Africa? Is the African Union not be too lenient in its approach to resolving the matter? Beyond an AU statement, what is next? This is today's big story with me, Stephen N.T. Now, black Africans in South Africa are living in fear as shops and homes are being attacked in a frenzy xenophobic violence which has attracted worldwide condemnation. The ECOWAS regional body, in a statement signed by Ghana's president, has called for swift action in tackling the problem. But beyond that, there is no stern warning of punitive sanctions if the attacks continue. We'll be going over to South Africa to get a situation report on the matter. Meanwhile, Ugandans and other citizens in the Southern African region are angry at these attacks, as some of their citizens have been caught in these attacks. We're trying to get onto the telephone Jojo Kobina, who is a journalist and a former producer here at Joy News. He now lives in Uganda, and he'll be joining us on via phone to give us an update on the matter. Meanwhile, we have on the line a South African journalist to give us a quick update of the situation there. Good evening, sir, and thanks for your time on today's big story.
Yes, good evening.
Now, we in Ghana and the rest of Africa are concerned that our African brothers and sisters who live in South Africa are under these attacks. I know that you are a South African journalist. I'd like to hear from you what the general concern among Southern Africans are in connection with the presence of non-South Africans in their country.
Well, the concern, as you might have seen, or with everyone witnessing what is happening in the country, is quickly the xenophobic attacks continuing in South Africa and threatening, the livelihood of our fellow African brothers and sisters. So, Robert Mugabe was here last week, or a week ago. And he's also expressed the disappointment that he had. I mean, when he was here, he came to South Africa for the first time in 21 years, which was seen as a breakthrough considering that Zimbabwe is South Africa's neighbor. And then this happened. And in Southern Africa, for an example, countries like Malawi had thought of pulling away or getting people who are in South Africa from Malawi to go back to Malawi. Whilst this was happening. So in Southern Africa, there's been a lot of concern, especially because Southern Africa, we have our own challenges.
Right. Now, Muthoba, I know that in my interaction and relationship with you, I know that yourself and a lot of other Southern Africans who are well educated and have a better understanding of the role inter-African relationships play for the development in our continent, both in South Africa and other countries, would not be this much xenophobic. So my key question is, which category of Southern Africans are these angry about the presence of other Africans in their country?
It is generally people who are uneducated, as you say, or have received little education in the past, and unemployed people. Like I said in a previous interview with Joy News, that the actions have been caused, that has happened, are misguided. I mean, it's anger that South Africans have towards the government for the lack of job opportunities that they were promised for voting for certain people, and they basically, taking out their frustrations on our fellow brothers and sisters. And somebody, on Tuesday, I think somebody actually put it out there on one of the national broadcasters on radio, asking South Africans. It was a very important person, and this person said, "Imagine a South Africa without African foreigners."
That's right.
I myself hadn't even viewed it like that in the past, because I never thought something like this would happen again since 2008. And no one can imagine a South Africa without our fellow African brothers and sisters. We don't want to imagine a South Africa like that.
Right, Muthoba, we will leave it there, and I'm sure that subsequently we will be keeping in touch, and we're very grateful that you took time to give us a quick rundown of the situation in Southern Africa. Chappie Muthoba is a South African journalist who is in Johannesburg, where he's speaking to us from. Now, I told you earlier that our Joy News reporter, Jojo Kobina, who was formerly the producer here, now lives in Uganda, where there are signs and concerns that Ugandans are angry at what is happening to other Africans living in South Africa. Jojo Kobina is joining us on the telephone lines now. Jojo Kobina, grateful that you could join us. Good evening.
Good evening, Steve.
Now, Jojo, we would like you to raise your voice a little so we can hear you. Now, what's the concern in Uganda against what is happening in South Africa? I know that Uganda is pretty close to South Africa, and a lot of Ugandans live in South Africa, so this xenophobic attack definitely will have some kind of concerns rising in Uganda. What are these concerns?
Well, friends are very much concerned about the xenophobic attack in South Africa, because there are so many Ugandans in South Africa. And as you rightly said, Uganda is very close to South Africa, just about 3 hours than we're in South Africa. And there's so many Ugandans there who are sort of, I would say, economic migrants, going there to hustle with money. And it's one very important concern of Ugandans is the fact that they have supported the South Africans during the apartheid era, and many people are talking about the fact that Museveni helped and trained some South African forces, and they didn't have O.R. Tambo, and it's very, very interesting. They didn't have their national sports figure named after Nelson Mandela. So Ugandans have a very strong affinity to South Africa. So they feel very hurt, and they feel very angry that South Africans are attacking their national.
Jojo, I know that you have lived in South Africa before, where you studied for your LLM. Now, during the time you were in university, I have been to South Africa, Johannesburg, for just 12 days. So my understanding of the relationship between black Southern Africans and other black Africans won't be as pronounced as you who have lived there for a year. Is there anything in particular from your recall of life there which you will share with us to suggest that these things didn't just start yesterday, and that perhaps there have been simmering tensions developing among Southern Africans against their brothers for several years?
Well, South Africa is a very developed place. People love to live there, and I mean, they see the African paradise. But it is really tough living there as an African migrant, especially when you sit in your taxi. That is the atrocious in South Africa, and people call you Makwere means you're a pest. And it happens, especially when you have a different accent, and you tell them, oh, I want to get down here. They're like, oh, Makwere. So they see African nationals as pests, people who have come to sit on their jobs. And those were the sentiments when I was in South Africa. It was really a very tough time in South Africa, Pretoria, which is supposed to be very safe. I remember one midnight I went to sleep and I was returning home and I was in a very big cloth, but I was just having fun because it was cold. And my dear, some South Africans, he took me for a Nigerian and they started chasing me. Hey, Chris, Nigerian, we are here for you. So they chased me. I had a very hot chase. What was good about Pretoria is that the place is very safe. You have so many policemen patrolling. So the patrol, I was running, and then the police officers ran to me and they said, "What is happening?" And I said, "Oh, people are chasing me." And they put me in their van and they took me back home. You can imagine if there was no police officer.
Yeah, your life could have been.
So, when the attack started, I thought all those things that happened while I was living in Africa and how dangerous it is living in this African mindset.
Right, Jojo Kobina, Mr. Kobina, do keep safe, and we'll be getting back to you now and then as we monitor the situation there, and I wish you very well in Uganda. Jojo Kobina was a former producer here at Joy News. He's a Ghanaian journalist who lives in Uganda. Irbad Ibrahim is an international relations and security analyst. He's also joining us. Irbad, good evening.
Good evening, Steve.
Now, I know that xenophobic attacks, these are things we've discussed before on this platform, and I remember that when we discussed it, we expressed concerns that certain behaviors and utterances among Africans could ignite a whole lot of trouble, and this is what we have seen in South Africa. So, quickly, your reaction to what is happening there?
Well, Steve, I'm scandalized by this level of barbarity that has been exuded in Durban and Joburg. I think immolating a person in the street because he's from another African country and the person is seeking greener pastures, I think that is quite inexplicable and is barbaric and medieval, and it is much so an international embarrassment for the continent because South Africa is seen as a beacon in a model African country. So I'm quite scandalized.
Right. Irbad, you use the word medieval and barbaric. These are very strong words. Now, if I ask you, as somebody who has been monitoring the wires and know how the story unfolded and has developed this far, would you say that perhaps this is not surprising coming from South Africa?
It is surprising, and you can talk about remote causes and immediate causes of this heinous activity that is taking place currently. First of all, I think South Africans are suffering from an identity crisis. And when you look around the world, those peoples of the world that were ever oppressed, and they now find themselves at a station of strength. Quite ironically, instead of empathizing with the downtrodden, they seek to punish them as well. Adolf Hitler and the Nazis gassed millions of Jews. Now that the Jewish people are powerful in Israel, they go haywire, bombarding all other countries. So for the fact that these people were coming from, apartheid, when the South African, black person was oppressed by a foreigner, we would anticipate that they would be able to reconcile their current independent identity with what they were before they really got independence. And for the fact that these same Africans from Zimbabwe, Africans from Malawi, Africans from Ghana. I learned one of the casualties is even a Ghanaian.
Exactly.
These were the very people that rallied around Mandela and rallied around the South African people and made sacrifices so that they would gain independence. So is that how they would want to pay us back? By killing our brethren in the streets in such brazen disregard for human life? It's quite scandalous, and I believe so that moving forward, the leadership in South Africa should be seen doing something to prevent any recurrence of this. You remember, Steve, in 2008, up to 60 African nationals were killed as a result of such xenophobic attacks. So the attacks are becoming one too many, and therefore we need to hold the Republic of South Africa responsible, and so at the right steps will be taken so that we don't have a rehash of this in future.
Right, Irbad. Edward, we will have you hold briefly, and we'll go to Dr. Vladimir Nchidan. So there being global, worldwide, worldwide condemnation of the xenophobic attacks, where there are reports that the new Nigerian government has issued a memo, along with civil society groups, to the South African embassy, warning the South African government to take action to curb these attacks. Otherwise, South African businesses in Nigeria will be shut down. Here in Ghana, Occupy Ghana, a pressure group, is also condemning the attacks and is actually expressing worry that very little response has come from government. Meanwhile, we know that one Ghanaian has been killed in these attacks, and there are issues of diplomatic relationships between Ghana and South Africa. Dr. Vladimir Nchidan will be addressing some of these issues. Doc, good evening.
Good evening, and good evening to your listeners.
We're all sad, really, and we do not want to preempt whatever action needs to be taken by the South African government to resolve the matter. But do you think the South African government is doing enough, has done enough, and whether the response from ECOWAS and AU is enough, really?
Well, let me start from the bottom. I mean, the responses from the AU, ECOWAS will always be a post-ante reaction, and not a preventive thing. And so it is with all other international organizations. Things happen before they react. And it's because of the nature of the structure of these organizations. But let's come straight to the point. I mean, I think I agree with Erbad that the South Africans have a problem. But I wouldn't fully say that it's a problem of identity. It's a problem of history.
Yeah.
You know, they've known nothing but chaos and turmoil during the period of apartheid. And the dismantling of apartheid brought some kind of socio-psychological expectation that the blacks were going to, it was like going to be a revenge kind of thing. But Mandela didn't allow that. Unfortunately, governments of Mandela were unable to sustain the momentum of making South Africa a whole of South Africa kind of thing. That is where maybe Erbad is correct in saying of the crisis of identity.
Doc, I need to digress a bit. I mean, the question I asked you about the roles of what AU and ECOWAS are doing, let me come down a bit so that we can make this relevant to Ghana. Other African countries are withdrawing their citizens from South Africa. They are airlifting them away and putting in place measures to ensure that these citizens are safe. We haven't heard anything like that coming from the Ghana government. Do you think that an action, a much more robust action, should be taken by the Ghana government?
Well, at times, in a hysteric kind of thing, you create more chaos. I don't know what the government is doing, and I cannot comment on that. But I think by now, some diplomatic actions may have been taken. By now, our foreign ministry may have called the High Commissioner over here and given our side of what we see and what we want done. This may be done under the quiet without maybe the prying eyes of the media and things like that. There is a possibility that our High Commissioner in South Africa may have also been given the mandate to take the problem from there. They have spoken with the foreign secretary or the foreign minister of South Africa by now over it. And maybe there are plans afoot also to see where Ghanaians are and what can be done. We don't know yet.
Right.
So let us not fault government now. Citizens like Nigeria, which has a number of population is large out there, would take a precipitate action, would take a very serious, quick action like they have done. So let's wait until our government also comes out, and then we can say it's enough or not enough.
Right, Doc, we're grateful for your time. I'm afraid we don't have a lot of time. And Irbad Ibrahim, we're also grateful for your time. We will take a break and we'll return for more.